Hello again, it's Mr. RG Stuff here. Well, I'm in the workshop with the motor from my second HMV 162 gramophone. This is a model 32 motor. I've not really had it running. I wound it a few turns in the shop before I bought it. It's completely caked up with grease and just basically needs a good clean. I really don't know what sort of state it's in internally. I don't really want to have to open up the spring barrel, but I will do if it basically isn't working properly. Anyway, I'm just going to start by just sort of wiping away some of the grease on here because there's just so much grease. Somebody at some point has decided that greasing it is the thing to do. Let's take some of that off. I've got it mounted up on a couple of bits of wood with some cardboard strips, just to protect the actual wood itself. So anyway, much as these do need to be well greased, this is absolutely ridiculous. Now my other HMV 162 does have a working motor, and I could of course borrow or steal that one out temporarily, but it would be much better if I could get this one to run. Now that's far from done, but just pick it up and stick that camera a bit better. You can see it's starting to come along. There's a fair amount of grease on the other side as well. Loads and loads of grease on this bit here. No wonder it's running slowly. There's just so much congealed grease. Now this machine was sold to me as not working. However, my analysis in the shop was that there wasn't anything obviously broken or missing on it. I didn't get a chance to look at the motor at that stage. It just sounded, or looked and sounded like it just needed a very good clean and lubrication, and I'm still of that opinion actually. I still think that's really all that needs doing to it. Now I did think maybe removing a bit of the grease would allow me to put me in a position where I could then just wind it and give it a quick go, but I'm beginning to think that might not be such a good idea. Okay, well what I've decided to do is actually to remove the motor from the baseboard. I'm going to use some sort of solvent. The only thing I've got to hand actually I think is WD-40, which will probably do the trick, to just try and loosen up some of this grease so I can clean it off a bit better. The motor is held on by 4 screws or machine screws which have lock nuts on, but they do seem to actually come off relatively easily, so don't even really need a spanner for the top one. Try to keep them in sets. So I think we just take the other ones out. Now one of these I think has a washer on the top. I think it might be the one that's over here that you probably can't quite see. Okay, so no washer came out, so it's probably still stuck on the baseboard. Now, although the speed adjuster is connected through here, it's actually not really connected because basically it just pushes down on this lever. So it has actually been adjusted so that it's at the fastest speed. And in fact, if I wind the little knob back, this should just lower this. And so by winding that knob, it lowers the screw, or pulls the screw back through. Thus, this spring lever here is able to come lower, which basically pushes the pad against the disc here, which slows the motor down. However, as the motor is in such a gummed up state, that just doesn't make any difference whether you have it fully out or whether you have it in a bit. The motor still just runs far too slow. Presumably if you wound it into so it was like on the very slow speed, the motor would run even more slowly than it does at the minute, or does presumably at the minute. As I say, I've only seen it run very, very briefly in the shop, and also the turntable turned a little bit in one of my previous videos when I was demonstrating taking the platter off. So with a bit of luck, I should find this motor will now move. Yes. Now, have I missed something? Just turn you around again. Okay, so I've realised that although the speed control is here and it's not really attached at all to the motor, the other part of the speed control, the speed indicator, is most certainly attached to the motor, so I should have removed that first. So what I'm going to do is just spin this board round again, pop the screws back in, and then I'll be able to flip it over and remove the speed control. Right, well, this is a brake here, which we don't need to worry about. This is the speed control here. So there is the little speed control window, and that's the, make sure I don't lose that screw there. That screw there is the one that actually adjusts the speed. And there's a little, probably celluloid window there, which is bent out of shape and darkened, but I can sort that out. I can either cut a new one out of new plastic. I actually do have a spare one of those because I've got a spare whole speed controller, but we'll worry about that at a later point. We'll take this panel out here. Now, I'm pretty sure these parts have not been off this machine in a good long time, maybe never. I mean, that screw underneath there looks pretty good, but the top less so. And although I have covered this with my previous one, and I'll probably cover it again, this speed control thing here, this panel actually has instructions on how to set the speed control. And the tricky bit is actually this little arm here. So this is what we're talking about, this little arrow indicator here that runs on this dial. And the dial, interesting enough, appears to be nailed in, but that looks like it will clean up quite well. It's a shame that's not obviously removable. It might be. It might just be attached in with something else, but on the face of it, it's not. So I have to be very careful cleaning that up. Maybe I need to cover that up I've already managed to get a drop of WD-40 on it, but it doesn't seem to have had any bad effect. Okay, well, I've covered up the speed display there with a bit of cardboard. I put some WD-40 in there, around where this little nut is. I'm pretty sure that if I can just get that nut off, then there'll be a washer and then this arm will come off. This little indicator is just a push fit on top. And as I mentioned, there are instructions on here, on this little plaque here, which are not readable at the minute because it's just too dirty, to change the settings so that when you get it running at the right speed, you can then get the needle pointing at the right speed as well. I did do a very short video on that a while back, actually without the use of this plaque. I just figured out a way of doing it, so I should be able to get the setting right again without too much trouble. Other important thing obviously is to make sure that you don't lose the pieces, so I'm using a few plastic pots. Right, let's get those screws out again. Okay, so the motor should now lift up without problem. There we go. And just a few old gramophone needles in there as well. So there's that interesting little cutout there, which the governor goes into, because the governor swings too much. I have to check on my other HMV. 162's got this. It may be, if the board is thicker on this one, then it needed this cutout. It may just be standard, and then just a whole bunch of presumably used gramophone needles. Well, I've mounted the motor up on some bits of wood, so just screwed down in one corner there, and I've cleaned it up a fair bit. I mean, this is very, very, very far from being clean. But it's cleaner than it was. The other thing which I did was I took off the speed indicator, so that was a separate module. Presumably there were some machines that this motor was fitted in which just didn't have that fitted at all, but certainly the examples of this motor that I have both do. Anyway, I've taken it off so that there won't be any damage to the fine column that drives the needle. Now, I've cleaned a lot of the grease that I can get to. What I'm going to do now is actually just wind the motor just a little bit. Clean up some of the rubbish first. The idea being that it will turn the gears round a little bit and hopefully allow me to clean it a little bit more. So I'm just going to literally wind it a little bit more. Very, very sticky. Right, let's take that out. Now I can actually get to some of the bits that I wasn't able to get to before. Look at that, that's just disgusting. Doesn't actually smell too bad. And there's this whole section around here. It's a worm drive, which I've squirted quite a bit of WD-40 on as well. So I'm just going to try and clean up around here. That was caked so much before. I mean, the actual worm drive looked like a sort of cone. It was really very odd. It was just so much grease. Now if I move it around a bit, if I let the brake go, I mean nothing's happening, but there we go. With a little bit of encouragement, motor seems to be running just fine. So clearly it does need rather more work, but on the face of it, let's give it another little go. I can hear something rubbing there a little bit. Well, I've cleaned it up a bit more. I think it's fair to say that whoever last greased this didn't bother to remove the old grease that was on it already, because there is a noticeable difference between some of the grease that's sort of packed in the grooves of the worm drives and some of the sort of looser grease that's just plastered all around it. Anyway, I had noted a bit of rhythmic noise when it was running just a few minutes ago, but that seems to be a bit improved. So if I set it going, now that seems to be running just fine. Now clearly I need to clean it up a bit more, but I think I'll leave it there for this video. So, one last run. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Mr. RG Stuff.